Hey, fourth grade. Okay, so last week we spent some time looking at China and Japan. And so today we're going to hop over to Asia mainland from Japan and we're going to start looking at Korea and India, beginning with Korea. Now, on this map, Korea may be a little hard to see. So if we come over here, you'll see that I'm right next to Japan. But when we look over this China Sea and the Sea of Japan, there's a channel that can go right, look at that, that is right in between Korea and Japan, okay? All right, so let's jump over to Korea and talk more about it. Now, from this map, you'll notice that there's actually two Koreas now, North Korea, South Korea. Well, that hasn't always been that way. Korea came into existence 2,333 years BC. So that's well over 4,000 years ago. It came into existence as an independent country. And much like China, Korea was ruled by dynasties or different ruling families until 1910, when Japan came over and claimed it as a colony. Now, Japan was so bad to the Korean people that they banned the Koreans from using their own language. All Koreans were expected to speak Japanese, and they even forced the Korean people to change their names to Japanese names. Even though many of the Asian languages do sound similar, for someone who's not familiar with Asian languages, there are very distinct differences in each of the language. Each of them are all very unique. So imagine, like, I don't know, France coming in and taking over America, like that's ever going to happen, taking over America and telling everybody that now you have to speak French, you can't speak English, even if you don't know it, you have to speak French, and you have to all change your name to French names. So that would be along the lines of that. That's not something good. All right, so now the Soviet Union, which is what we used to call Russia. Russia was Russia for a long time until the early 1900s, and there was a revolution and the type of government communism took over. Communism is one of those governments that just kind of takes over everything and tells you what to do, when to do, how to do, where to do, what you can think, what TV shows you can watch, where you can go. So while communism is not a good governmental type at all, the Soviet Union did liberate Korea from Japan shortly after World War II. So we're talking the late 1940s, early 1950s. Now, after that, however, Korea ended up splitting into two countries, North Korea, South Korea. That line that's going through the middle of the countries is known as, let me back it up, is known as the 38th parallel. And it's this big several miles of land that's in between these two countries that goes right across the peninsula that North Koreans can't come in, South Koreans can't come in. It's basically no one's allowed on the either side. So it just separates the two countries because North Korea became a communist country like the Soviet Union. But South Koreans liked their independence. They liked their freedoms, so they decided to become a republic like America is. So now notice, I find this very interesting. The population of North Korea is a little over 23 million, while the population of South Korea is just over 49 million. That's about double the people in the, living in the South Korea than North Korea, because South Korea is so much nicer of a place to live compared to North Korea, where they basically tell you what to do every day, all day. I've even heard that in Korea, they have a national haircut where they require people to cut their hair a certain way. So it's a very oppressive government in North Korea, more freedoms and independence in South Korea. So the two countries, you can tell, are very not happy with each other. They don't get along. They really don't. Now, and here are some instruments that are classic to Korean music. You can see some of them are very similar to some of the Asian instruments that we've seen so far. This particular one, the tanso, which is a type of Korean flute, very similar to the Western flute that we have in European and American classical music. The hangul is the Korean version of the violin. Keigum is the kind of like the Japanese version of the koto that we looked at when we talked about Japan. The sanap it's almost like a bugle in a way, but you don't play it straight out like a trumpet or a bugle. You have it down like this, like a recorder, except the bottom of it's flared out a lot. It looks like kind of like a bell. And the yangum is just another version of a finger instrument. You pluck the strings with your finger as you are playing. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to end this show, and we're going to look at your Korean song, Bluebells. So this is Bluebells. And if we read at the top, it says that in the springtime in Korea, young girls gather the edible roots of a plant called a dorazi plant. And it grows in the hills and valleys of the land in Korea. This song is very popular with children in both North and South Korea. The dorazi plant is it's a bluish plant. The translation for it would be bluebells, or a blue flower, just some kind of blue. So I know the painting in the picture has a purple flower, but it is more on the blue side of things. They're talking about the dorazi plant. Okay, so now let's look here at our opening line. We are going to be singing this in English to start, and then I'd like to try it a little bit of the Korean. Korean's actually, if I had to pick one of the easier ones, Korean, Chinese, or Japanese, I would say Korean's probably one of the easier ones, followed by Japanese. Okay, so let's sing this in English first. Sing this after me. Bluebells, bluebells, lovely bluebells. Give that a try. Here we go. Bluebells, bluebells, lovely bluebells. Now, looking at the next line. Deep in the mountains, my bluebells grow. Give that a try. Here we go. Deep in the mountains, my bluebells grow. All right, next line. Here we go. Gathering bluebells in white valleys. All right, let's give that a try. Here we go. Gathering bluebells in white valleys. And the last line here at the bottom. Baskets of bluebells will overflow. Give that a try for me. Here we go. Baskets of bluebells will overflow. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to start the CD up, and we are going to see if we can sing that in English. Okay. Here we go. Bluebells, bluebells, lovely bluebells, deep in the mountains, my bluebells grow. Gathering bluebells in white valleys, baskets of bluebells will overflow. Okay, now let's see if we can start learning a little bit of this Korean. And I promise the Korean's not that bad, so don't panic. Okay, you did the African languages, and those were a little trickier than this one, all right? So let's give this a try. Sing this after me. Dorazi, dorazi, pek dorazi. And notice under the J-I, I wrote the letters Z-I because that J-I sounds very similar to a Z kind of feel, okay? So let's try that. Here we go. Dorazi, dorazi, pek dorazi. See, that wasn't so bad. Let's look at the next line. Sim, sim, sanchu, pek dorazi. Give that a try. Here we go. Sim, sim, sanchu, pek dorazi. You guys are doing awesome. Here's the next line. Listen carefully. Andu pureman keyudo. Let's give that a try. Here we go. Andu pureman keyudo. And then the last line can get a little bit tricky if you're not really watching that Korean. Okay, so listen first. Taekwan chori suri sa sa da nu nu da. Give that a try. Here we go. Taekwan chori suri sa sa da nu nu da. Now keep in mind what we're looking at on the page as Korean is actually a pronunciation guide. The words are spelled out for the most part how they're supposed to sound. If you actually look at the Korean language looks more like lines and symbols creating little pictures, very similar to the Chinese, Japanese, and many other Asian languages. They look more like symbols on the page, little box with symbols. And I know that at least in Japanese, I'd have to look it up and see if this was true for Chinese and Korean as well. But in Japanese, the words are actually written from top to bottom instead of left to right. Okay, so what you're looking at as Korean is actually a pronunciation guide spelled out so that us English American speakers know how to sing this in Korean. So let's go ahead and jump in, go back to the beginning, and we're going to try this from the top in Korean. Just do the best you can, okay, guys? Here we go. So the instruments are playing the melody first for us. All right, here we go on Korean. Dorasi, 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 sim, sim, sam, shogor, dorasi. Andu pureman, keyudo, taekwan churi suri sasa, danununda. Very good. Okay. Awesome. Okay, before we move on to our next country, what I'd like to do now is we're going to look at this Dorazi song, okay? Specifically rhythm. All right, so we sang it just a second ago, and now we're looking at the rhythm because there's a new rhythmic symbol in here that I want you guys to take note of, and that is this guy right here. Let me see if I can even highlight it. That is this rhythm right here, okay? Now notice that first one there, this has a dot. Oh, I clicked a button. No, I don't want to do that. Go away, okay. I thought I was clicking a button to close. There we go. To write on here, but I don't think I have that option. No, that's cool. That's cool. All right. So notice that this looks like a ta, but this ta has a dot on it. That dot tells me that this ta is now going to be worth a beat and a half. And then I've got this one right here. That's worth a half beat. We're going to talk more about that rhythm at a later date. I just wanted to point it out to you because it doesn't sound like a regular ta rhythm, or even when you're throwing t on there, it is going to be a little bit different. So I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead and stick that in your brain for when we look at that. Okay, now let's visit our next country, India. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is India. Now, as you can see, India is not just the one big landmass here, but it's also this piece off to the side, okay? So we're gonna look at the big map real quick. Let me back up all the way to the big map. Ooh, almost, there we go, big map. Okay, now as you can see, the largest country in Asia is what? That's right, it's Russia. Russia takes up this whole big giant piece up here in the top part of the continent. China would be the second largest country in Asia, followed by, you guessed it, India. India is a very large country, very populated, okay? So India is located in South Asia with a population of, get this, over 1 billion people, 1.2 billion people. It is extremely crowded. Now, if we compare that to the Chinese population, 1.3 billion. So China is almost double the size, but only has 100 million more people than India does. So India is really crowded. Now, the Indus civilization settled in what we now know as India way back as early as 2500 BC. BC meaning before Christ, so in the Judeo-Christian calendar. So that means we're talking about like 4,500 years ago. The Indus civilization settled in what is now India. 2,000 years after that, there are different tribes of India, kind of like think of the Indian tribes who would migrate all over the different parts of the US. The different tribes of India would migrate all over the different areas of what we now know as India and all directions of the country. And finally, all the tribes were united under what we call the Gupta dynasty. Okay, this is why there are so many different languages spoken in India, countless number of languages spoken in India. Hindi is the language that is most spoken by 49% of the population, followed by various other languages, but it really depends on where in India that person is from, would depict what language they're going to be speaking, that kind of stuff, like where they moved to. So now during the 17 and 1800s, England came in, you know, because they just had to mess up everything, came in, the British East India Trading Company. And you may have heard them reference, if any fans in here of the Pirates of the Caribbean series, you will hear that in at least in the first three movies, that referenced a lot. And the East India Trading Company actually kind of sort of became the bad guys in the second two, the second and the third movie. Okay, so now they annexed, meaning they took over a large portion of the Indian country. Well, under the Gupta dynasty, they just kind of took it over without asking. Until the Indian Rebellion in 1857, after which England completely took over the country and ran the whole thing without asking the people of India, until India finally gained its independence in 1947. Okay, the music of India includes traditional folk music that varies based on what part of the country it's from. Okay, so like the languages, there's different languages found throughout the country. There's different types of Indian music, and the way it sounds, the instruments that they use vary based on where in the country of India it's coming from. Because remember, it was just a bunch of independent tribes that were finally united under the Gupta dynasty before it became what we now know as India. Okay, now nowadays we have like current pop music from India, and that's similar to a type of dancing called Bollywood. Then you got Indian classical music. This is Carnatic and Hindustani music, music of their religion. Okay, and these are some instruments that are very popular in Indian music. And I know some of you guys were looking back at that last slide and you saw the snake. Yes, yes. The instrument that that guy is playing to charm the snake, the cobra, is called a punji. Okay, it's also called a bean or ben. It's a wind instrument played by snake charmers in India and also a country known as Pakistan, which is not, you know, I think it's like right next door to India. The instrument consists of, you blow into an air reservoir that builds up and it channels the sound down through these two reed pipes that come together and to make the sound. Okay, so you see him down here at the bottom with his two cobras. He is playing the punji, and something about the melodies that the punji plays and the way it sounds sort of kind of hypnotized the snakes and put him in a trance. So he's got to be very careful when he stops playing, because he's got like seconds to get that lid back on that basket. But it is something very popular in the Indian culture. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit more about the, I'm not going to say national religion of India, because there's many different religions in India, but it's probably the most people in India, you know, worship in this religion, and that is Hinduism. All right, real quick before we get into Hinduism, I just want to give you some more stats about them. Let's see if we can find. There are 17 major languages spoken. But you know how in America we have English. English is the national language. And of course we have Spanish and German and French and just whatever else kind of languages come over to our culture. But the most spoken language in America is English. But depending on where in America you're from, the English may sound a little different. Someone from up north is not going to sound the same as us down here in the South, okay? So like with India, you've got 17 major languages throughout the country that are spoken, but there's 844 different ways that this is spoken, okay? Now, the major religions include Hinduism, which is the #1 religion of India, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. All right, let's see. Now, I'm trying to find some other, okay, their national animal is the tiger. The national bird is the peacock. The national flower is the lotus. The national tree is the bayam. The national fruit is a mango. So whenever you eat mango, you're eating the national fruit of India. Okay, and they don't call their money a dollar. They call it a rupee. Okay, so what paise is, I don't know, but their money system is just slightly different than what we have here. So the money is counted a little differently is basically what I mean by that, okay? All right, so now let's look a little bit more into Hinduism. Now, Hinduism is considered the oldest religion in the world. It dates back over 4,000 years. There are over 900 million followers, and most of those followers do live in India. 95% of the world's Hindus live in India. Okay, now because the religion itself doesn't have a specific founder behind it, it's very difficult to trace the origin and history. Now, basically what we're talking about is they believe in God and angels and things like that. They just have different names for them. Their main God, they call him Brahma, okay? That is what they call God. And they've got some lower beings behind that, which would be equivalent to the Christian version of angels, okay? So while they do worship a little differently than we do, their basic beliefs are pretty well the same. And they believe in, let's see, it's got listed here some things that they believe in. They believe in the soul. They believe that your current actions will dictate what happens to you down the road. That's a type of thought process called karma. They believe that you should strive to be good and moral and always treat each other well, treat all living creatures as important to you. Food is an important life of them. They don't eat pork or beef, and many of them are actually vegetarians. So it's a very spiritual religion. So the song that you're going to be learning is a very spiritual song. And with this one, the kind of behind it when you're singing this song, basically you're asking for blessing upon yourself, for cleansing yourself and becoming a better person today than you were yesterday. So this is a Hindu song of blessing that is very popular throughout the Indian country. Okay, so this is the song Shri Ram Jai Ram, and that just basically translates to glory to the Lord. This is a song that would be sung during some Hindi worship services, and like we have songs in Christianity where we are, and then many other religions where you're expressing glory to the Lord, to God. This would be very similar to that. So notice, like we had in some of our African songs we did, we have a leader and a group part, okay? So I'm gonna do the leader part, and really all you have to do is echo me. So let me show you what each of these pieces sound like, okay? So here at the top, we have Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, and then the group would echo, okay? The second one, we have Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, and then the group would echo, and you guys are going to be the group here in just a minute. The third one right down here would be Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram, and then the group would echo. And notice we have this little #1 right here. Well, that #1 tells us first ending. So the first time you sing this song, and if you've been with me in music class here before, then you've probably seen this first and second ending thing. You see the dots? What do the dots tell us? Yeah, the dots tell us to repeat. So we're supposed to go back to the beginning, do all this, but when we get done with this line here, do we do #1 again? No, because that was the first ending. So that means we got to drop down here to the second ending. So the second time we sing through it, I'm gonna go shiram jaram jai jaram, and then you'll start here shiram, jump down, jaram jai jaram, and then I'll do one more where you echo, and then together at the end we go shanti shanti Shanti. And that's it. That's the song. Okay. So let's see if we can sing this from the beginning, you guys. Okay. I'm going to zoom out just a hair. Oh, that might be a little too much. Let me zoom back in so we can see it better. Okay. All right. So let's give this one a try from the beginning. Okay. Here we go. Remember, I'm the leader, you're the group. Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. That's the top. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Second line. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Third line. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Drop down. We're down here. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Ending. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Now, that instrument that you heard playing at the beginning is a very complicated guitar instrument called a sitar, okay? Now, I did want to point out one more thing before we're done, is notice down here at the bottom, there's this like little half crescent thing with the dot. That is called a fermata, and a fermata means we're going to hold the note for some time until someone tells us to cut off. So this usually would be a talk, just one beat, one sound, you're done. But because of that fermata, they want us to hold it for longer, okay? So that's what we are doing. All right, cool. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now, what I need you guys to go do is go take your quiz. You guys have been doing a really good job keeping up with your stuff, and I really appreciate it. I cannot wait to get you back into the classroom so that we can, you know, continue to learn all this cool music from all around the world until we get back home to America and start learning some music from our history here in America that's popular here with kids over the ages, okay? But until then, until I can get you in the classroom, thank you so much for keeping up with your videos. Make sure to go take your quiz. You can find it linked in the description below this video on YouTube. It's also embedded below the video on Schoology and even linked back on my website if you came from there, okay? All right, so I will see you guys soon. Bye.